Orlando.
Welcome to the OZone.
Welcome to the OZone.
Welcome to the OZone.
Welcome to the OZone.
The voice of Magic fans.
Welcome back to another episode of the OZone podcast, the voice of Magic fans. In the virtual studio today, we have Justin,
Yo.
Al,
What's going on?
myself, Anthony, and a very special guest joining us from ESPN Orlando 580 and the voice of Lakeland Magic, Nicky Football.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Good. How's it going?
It's going good. Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, for sure. We're excited to have you on and talk a little bit of, Lakeland Magic and everything you got going on. But before we do that, Nicky, how have you been doing during this coronavirus quarantine that we have going on?
I've been doing good. Just trying to stay sane, just like everybody else. Fortunately for me, I've been an essential employee at work, so we've been on the air every day, 5 days a week, kind of chronicling what this has done to sports. So I think of anybody, my life has probably changed the least because it's been Monday through Friday at work, and the only difference is what you're doing on the weekend. So I mean, it's been different, that's for sure. But at least I've had work to kind of lean on.
Obviously, the dynamics are a lot different, but are you at least enjoying being able to work from home, or are you still going into the office and recording that way?
Oh no, like I've still been going to the office. We've been in the studio. Yeah, we over at Cox Media Group is the parent company of ESPN 580, and what they did was they emptied out the entire sales half of our company. So they've all been working from home and then went to only essential on-air personality that's been either at the studio, or if you can work from home, they figured it out. But because of my role on two different shows and my role more as a producer with Scott Inez, I've been going in every day. So really, like not much has really changed for me. It's been my normal, noon, 1 o'clock until 8, 9 o'clock at night shift.
Wow, so staying busy despite all the craziness going on. Let's go into letting the listeners get to know you a little bit better. I know, again, we know you a bit from listening on ESPN 580 and on the Lakeland Magic games. But let's talk about how you got into sports broadcasting.
Oh, wow, sure. I went to the University of South Florida down in Tampa. Got there, and I really wanted to be a newspaper reporter because I was about 20 years late to what I thought my calling was. But so I got into the sports media side of things there and realized that they had a student radio station, and kind of fell in love with that place and was broadcasting the games there in Tampa, football, basketball, baseball, and really loved that. Left USF, and fortunately I graduated in May of 2013, and they had launched ESPN 580 in November of 2012, and they needed an overnight board op, and that's where I started. I was producing like Yankee basketball game or baseball games out on the West Coast, and there until 2-3 o'clock in the morning, and kind of worked my way up. And when Lakeland moved down to get to the Magic side of this, I'd been working as a Magic radio producer, cutting highlights for the team as part of our affiliation with the Magic when it was with ESPN 580 prior to the switch a few years ago. And was just positioned, had the experience necessary, and fortunately Shelley Wilkes, who's the president of the team, took a chance on me and allowed me to get the opportunity to call the games. So that's kind of it in a nutshell, at least how I ended up in Lakeland.
So you graduating from USF automatically makes you a diehard UCF Knight, right? A fan?
It's been different being behind enemy lines. This I've been here 7 years now. It's been different, but I've enjoyed their success because it's I can't even defend it anymore. I can't even debate it.
Right, absolutely. So, Nicky, what were your favorite sports? Obviously, you get the nickname Nicky Football. I was always curious, why not Nicky Basketball? I feel like there's a lot of influence on your side in the basketball world as well. So, favorite sports, and then favorite team growing up, and then kind of how you decided that nickname.
Sure. Well, you got to ask Scott Inez about that. Scott Inez is the nickname guy at ESPN 580. So when I started there, he came up with the Nicky Football nickname. I always joke it's because he thought I was going to be there 15 minutes and didn't want to learn my name. So he came up with the name. I've always been a big basketball fan. I grew up in Chicago. during the 90s. So this Last Dance documentary that's been on has been a ton of fun for me, reliving a lot of it. So I've always been more of a hoop head, but it's basketball and then it's football for me. I'm an NFL fan probably after that, and then a college football fan after that. And with my job, after basketball and football, whatever's kind of left, I watch a little baseball maybe or something. But I like golf too. I do a golf show on the weekends at ESPN 580, and golf is definitely a nice pastime for me to pass some time.
That's awesome. Now, Nick, how about, I know something new you're starting to do recently is the Down the Road Lakeland Magic podcast. That's been really fun to listen to the past few weeks here. How did that come about?
Yeah, that's been something new. So I think that during this COVID-19 pandemic, there's been just a need for content. And Shelly Wilkes and Aaron Hayes, who's our game day operations director at Lakeland, and Dante Marcatelli, who's the broadcasting director over there, who's a great guy. We all got together and they said, "Hey, would you be interested in doing this?" And I've always wanted to do kind of a longer form sit down with these guys and get to know them a little bit better, because I think we're all so familiar with the path that the guys in the NBA take, right? I mean, we watch them in high school and then either they go to college or they go overseas for a year, and their lives are so well chronicled. But the guys that are in the G League, it's, I just wrapped an episode with John Petroselli, who played 2 years with Lakeland, that's going to drop on Monday. And, those guys, it's, no scholarship offers for some of them. He went to D2 Malloy College. He was an inactive player for Erie, and then plays 2 great seasons in Lakeland and gets a big deal overseas in Israel this past year. And that's really intriguing. And I've always been somewhat obsessed with the idea of having to debate, do I want to play near home, and do I want to go overseas and play in a completely different time zone halfway across the world? So the stories you hear have been great. They've been a lot of fun, from underground basement basketball 3-on-3 leagues that guys are playing in right now to, playing for $1,500 every 2 months or something. So really, it's just been the need for content and my desire to kind of get to know the guys better, because I'm a game day employee. So I go in on game day and that's it, and get a chance to get to know them, but you're not around the team quite enough for me.
So I think it's interesting that you bring that up, because we've had some G League Lakeland guys on our podcast, Josh Majette, Vic Law, and those are 2 guys that, at least from speaking with, it feels like they really benefited from all of their experience, but being called up to play for the Magic has been very beneficial for their development. Who are some guys that you think have benefited the most currently on that Lakeland team from possibly having exposure elsewhere?
Oh, wow. In terms of call-ups, I think that Emil Jefferson comes to mind immediately. Emil is he's an interesting story. I mean, I think that if you ask the average college basketball fan or NBA fan who's played the most games in a Duke Blue Devils uniform, they wouldn't tell you it's Emil Jefferson, but that's who it is. That played 5 years at Duke for Krzyzewski, and he's kind of a tweener. Like what position is he at the next level? Can he shoot it well enough? He's gotten much better. I think there's NBA, so he's one that definitely comes to mind over the years in terms of a call up that I think has really benefited. And how could I leave my guy? I'm the president of the Kem Birch fan club, so my guy Kem Birch, who they found overseas. I love that dude. So I think Kem is another one who has found a sticking point in the league somewhere. He's going to be kind of, I think, that Dwayne Dedman-esque guy to go a little further back in Magic history, where either he'll stay in Orlando and become a great utility guy, or someone will be dying to give him a contract to kind of be on the middle to end of a bench and be a good culture, good hard-nosed guy.
I feel like the Magic really utilized Lakeland Magic pretty well, because they from development to calling players up, they seem to look there first before really trying to add just anyone to the roster, because they're really more familiar with the play settings, the coaching style, the whole night, because they try to keep it similar. Now there is a lot of mystery around a player like Chuma Okeke, who has spent so much time already with Lakeland. What have you seen? What have you heard? Is there really any information you can give us about this guy?
There's a little bit. I mean, I've gotten a chance to see Chuma kind of go through walkthroughs with the team on game days and stuff. You're right. I mean, there's definitely a lot of mystery around the guy. What kind of a player is he? How is he going to fit? He's really kind of worked on his jumper. He's been working on shooting, really what I've seen, because it's been a lot of stationary stuff because of the knee injury. So I don't have a ton of information for you, honestly. I do know that in Lakeland, they're very high on the guy, his work ethic, his attitude, especially good organizational, good team guy. But he definitely has been working on that jumper to kind of help the range a little bit. I think that's one thing they were working on. But the last time that I saw him when the league got postponed, he's still working back from the knee injury and getting into some what was he running? I'm trying to remember. The last home game we did, that's right. Now that I remember, because it was about 7 weeks ago, he was starting to do non-contact full court. So we were doing our last home game, and I had to walk across the court in order to go get something for the broadcast, and did not realize he was running full court. He almost ran me right over. So he's getting up to speed, but he wasn't doing full contact yet. So I know he's working towards that. That's all I can really say. They've kept him under wraps for sure.
That's exciting to hear because, again, like you mentioned, there's a lot of mystery around Chuma, who he is, and who will be here in Orlando when he finally arrives. So we're excited for sure to see him come to the team and join the guys on the Magic side. Now, Nick, what about when it comes to the current roster in Lakeland? Who is one player that you think has the highest ceiling on that team?
Well, highest ceiling on that team. That's a really good question. I would have to go. I'm not going to count Demille because he spent most of the year with the NBA team before the trade deadline. And I already gave him as an answer. So you guys have spoken with Vic Law. I know the organization loves Vic Law. I think that if he can build up his lower body a little bit more and condition himself, I think to take the daily and nightly pounding of an NBA schedule. Vic is a really smart player. You guys have talked to him. He's a real intelligent guy. I love his game. So he's a guy that would come to mind. And the other one, I'm going to go with the two-way players, so it's kind of unfair. BJ Johnson is going to figure it out at some point in time here. And I think he's going to be one of those, Kendrick Nunn type of stories. The three-point shooting has really improved over the last 2 years. Defensively, he's very gifted. And, I like him a lot. I think that BJ is the kind of guy where he's had a couple of 10 days. He's had that taste of the next level. And he's going to get there. Those are the two guys that definitely come to mind.
We're a big fan of BJ Johnson. The big game that we called him over to, and he kind of filled in for the LA was really my first exposure of him, and he knocked it out of the water. Because he's very long. He's a big player for his size, in his position. So all the players that you mentioned, we're big fans of, and we're definitely rooting for them. And we feel like they can definitely carve out a role for themselves and path into the NBA for sure. Nicky, let me ask you, because there's been a lot of talks around, and this may have happened maybe a month or so, but there's a lot of talks about rumors intertwining Golden State and Aaron Gordon, kind of trading for a first-round pick, first pick in the draft, whatever the case may be. One, do you feel as if that's enticing, that's a good move for the team that we have now? And two, do you feel like that's even a realistic option?
I'll start with the second point. I don't buy that rumor at all. I don't think it's realistic for Aaron Gordon, who is who's an extremely gifted athlete, who was playing probably the best month of his season when when the season got postponed. He went on a great run there. But Aaron Gordon is still I think everyone sees the slashing playmaking ability, and they think that would fit with Golden State. And it might, but I don't think that Golden State would give up the cost-controlled side of a number one pick. I mean, you get a guy like, an Anthony Edwards or whoever, LaMelo Ball or someone, at that number one pick, cost-controlled side of things. For an Aaron Gordon, who's, the deal is a very tradable deal, but, he's going to get paid $17, $16 million next year. I just don't see that for Golden State. Now, if it's a fifth pick, sixth pick, seventh pick, you work your way into the top 10, maybe it makes more sense. And I think it's a trade that would make sense for Orlando. I think that if Jonathan Isaac was healthy at the trade deadline, they would have moved Aaron Gordon. And that's just me from the outside looking in, where the team was, where Aaron was. Let's not forget Jeff Weltman and John Hammond didn't draft Aaron Gordon. They signed him, but they signed him to a deal that was very tradable. So I think that they communicated a lot there. But at some point, I think Aaron will be moved. I don't think that it's for the number 1 pick in the draft. I think that's a little bit too sweet of a deal.
One of the things you mentioned is, when the season kind of got suspended, it felt like AG was figuring it out. He was balling on all aspects. His assists were up, rebounds were up, his points were up, and it felt like he wasn't really forcing anything. He kind of figured out his pace, and understood what he could do well and what he couldn't. And he passed out of bad situations, which felt like in the beginning of the season he was forcing a lot. Do you think he did figure it out, or do you think it was just a flash in the pan? Because I feel like AJ has had these moments in the past where he's looked really good, and then he kind of reverts back to, the poor decision making that a lot of people talk about with him. So what do you think? Do you think he's figured?
Justin, I mean, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. How many would this be for Aaron Gordon? And I think that the ability is in there somewhere. It is. It's just about finding it. And I think it's mindset for him. I think that you underlined it perfectly. When he plays inside of himself, when he lets the game kind of come to him at times, I think that he has this desire to be kind of a 25, 26, 28 point a game night, the LeBron James of the Orlando Magic. When I would really like it if he said, okay, I'm going to be Draymond Green. I'm going to be the point forward that facilitates and, get yours. You want to score, that's fine. But when he thinks about the pass first and defensively is the menace that he can be, I mean, his best skill is on the defensive side. That's where I think he is the best version of himself. So if he realizes that he's not going to lead the team in scoring, but he'll lead the team in everything else, I think he'll figure it out. But I don't know if we're there yet. I've seen it too many times where he'll play 10, 12 good games.
Yeah, you said it perfectly right. I think we've all seen that from AG, those moments where he looks like a superstar, but like, hey, he's finally arrived, followed by 2 months of where's AG? So I think it's going to be an interesting decision for the team to figure out what to do with him going forward. And again, this offseason, we'll say a lot about that. Now, another guy that we have to make a decision on this summer, maybe not, is Evan Fournier. He has a player option. If he chooses to decline that option, what do you think the Magic should do with him? Should they bring him back or should they let him walk?
If he declines that option, the Magic should let him walk. Now, with this current situation, I don't know how he walks away from $17 million a year with losing whatever amount of money the NBA is going to lose is going to do to the salary cap. Because I was having a hard time finding $17 million a year out there for Aaron Gordon before the postponement of the season. And afterwards, Evan Fournier, that is. And afterwards, I don't know whether or not he's going to find it. So I think he's going to opt in. Let's just say in a vacuum, if he had opted out and everything was the same before the postponement, I would have let him walk. I think that this team needs to start to turn over the roster a little bit. You can only commit yourself to so much of a near 500 team, 42 and 40, 43 and 39, somewhere around there, whatever this team was going to end up being, maybe, maybe 40 and 42. So I probably would have let him walk. And Evan's been good for us, but you kind of you have Chuma, Okeke coming up. You have whoever the first round pick was going to be this year coming up and some other players too. So I would have kind of fleshed out the roster a little bit and let him go.
So it feels like between AG, Vooch, and Evan, a lot of money is tied up, and it feels like those guys have been on this roster for quite some time. And, we've kind of seen what the peak of them leading the roster looks like. If you had to make a decision between all three of those guys on who stays, who goes, who would you keep?
Wow. Can Mo Bamba show me anything so I can't choose Nick Vucevic? That's kind of the thing is, wow. I'd probably pick Nick Vucevic. He's the most consistent offensive player in the regular season for this team. Defensively, he's gotten better since Steve Clifford got to town. And when they reopened the facility, this may feel like a small thing, but who was the first guy in the building? It was Nick Vucevic. The guy has really stepped up into that kind of team leader role a bit. We've talked about Aaron Gordon's inconsistencies. Evan Fournier is a warrior. Like I feel like he's kind of vilified by the fan base. He's usually guarding one of the best players on the other team and has hit a lot of big shots for us. But though everyone says we have all of these forwards, all these big men, with Jonathan Isaac dealing with injuries 2 of his first 3 seasons, Aaron Gordon's inconsistency, Mo Bamba has not gotten a ton of minutes. Nick Vucevic is really the only big guy you have that you can count on night in and night out. So I'd probably go with Nick Vucevic.
Because we have an argument. So we have a group text that we kind of talk Magic basketball all the time on. And it feels like every time Vooch is on the court, yes, he is one of those guys who you could count on for a bucket. But it does feel like he slows the game down a lot. And with guys like Markelle, J.I., T. Ross, like you would think that the pace would be faster. AG, those are all guys that could run and jump out of the gym. So it's like, I think you're kind of stuck between, do you stick to the half court game and rely on Vooch because he's been an all-star and gotten you to the playoffs, or do you kind of flip the page and try to push the pace and kind of give it up to someone else like Mo Bamba?
Yeah, I just don't know if this team has enough shooting to do the pace and space that everyone wants them to do. You know what I mean? At one point in time this year, Aaron Gordon was shooting 29% from 3. Your only big shooters were Evan Fournier and Terrence Ross. Now, that's an interesting thought. Now, if you don't have Vooch on the floor, can you get some easier buckets just by trying to run teams off the floor? Everyone's doing that now, though. So I think the one thing that you do have is that kind of 1 in, 4 out kind of mentality with Nick Vucevic, and he can even spread the floor. So while I agree, it definitely slows things down until Markelle Fultz shows that he can really take a game over. I think you have to stick with Nick Vucevic. But you're definitely right there in terms of the style of play. It slows things down.
Now, Nick, you bring up Markelle Fultz's name. Now, he was a complete surprise to all Magic fans. We all wanted him to succeed, obviously, in Orlando and to do well. But to see him starting, right in November and to see what he's done in only 6 months of action, brings up a question that we've debated in the past also. Going forward, if you have to pick one to kind of build around, Jonathan Isaac, Markelle Fultz, who's that young piece that both free agents next year, but who do you build around if you have to be, in the front office for the Magic?
I can only pick one?
You can only pick one.
Wow, that's a great question. Wow. I'm a big Jonathan Isaac fan. I love Jonathan Isaac. I wanted them to take him where they took him, and they did. And I think I would go with Markelle Fultz, though. He has the pedigree. He's the number 1 pick. You stole him from Philadelphia.
Completely.
And other than the shoulder injury, which is kind of like saying other than that huge iceberg sitting out there for the Titanic, other than that shoulder injury, the guy has performed at every level he's been expected to. So I guess if I had to prioritize one, I would prioritize Markelle Fultz because he's also the guy that you're going to run your entire offense through. But those 2 guys are your core moving forward. It's Fultz, it's Isaac, and to a lesser extent, it's Vucevic. But I thought the team panicked when they moved Fultz into the starting lineup at the beginning of the year. I still remember doing that show, and I've not necessarily changed my mind because DJ Augustine has been so good for that team. And I hope they can bring him back too. There's another free agent that's coming up here. I like DJ Augustine. But he has held up to the night in, night out. He's played more games this year than he ever has, of course. I'm very impressed with him. And when we talked to him on media day, he seemed like someone who was just kind of at peace and finally comfortable. I think getting him out of Philadelphia was monumental for his career.
Now, let me ask you, Nicky, because this is something recently that ESPN just posted out, and it was listing the Magic all-time starting 5. Yeah. They listed T-Mac, Penny, Nick, Dwight, and Shaq. And I'll be honest with you, I was a little surprised with the Nick Anderson plug-in. I'm a Nick Anderson fan, but do you agree with that starting 5, or who would you switch out?
That starting 5 is cheating. It's not even close. ESPN had a lot of fun with that. Being the company man that I am, we all need content right now. I get it. You can't have. I don't mind the Nick Anderson at the 2. Now you can really play around with this. Scott Inez and I did, I think, on Friday's show or Thursday's show, talking about it. You can play around with it and kind of put anyone at the 2 there that you want. But I think Nick Anderson being the first draft pick in franchise history, where he sits kind of in his position in franchise history, the steal of Michael Jordan in '95. We just got done watching that. And his position with the organization now. Like I've talked to Nick and met Nick many times. I love Nick. I'd put him on this team. What the problem I actually have is at the 4-5. Dwight is not a power forward. You can't look at the top 5 win share guys and say, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Look, I've got 2 big guys, two forwards and a point guard. It doesn't work that way. The fun about doing a team like this, and I think this is where ESPN missed it, is the debate. Do you pick Shaq or do you pick Dwight at the 5? And then you look at Magic history when it comes to power forwards. The best power forward, pure power forward, is probably Horace Grant. But, I can take kind of a Hito Turkoglu if you want to slide him down and get creative, or Rashard Lewis. But you have to pick between Dwight and Shaq. That's what you have to do with this team. And ESPN didn't want to do it. I thought that they kind of ran from that, and I was disappointed.
Would a Shaq and Dwight duel, you don't think that because there's so much small ball that would kind of work in essence? Because when Dwight Howard first came into the NBA, he started off as a power forward. They played him in the 4 position a little while.
Yeah, they did, but that was because they had Calvin Cato on the team, and he was a pure center. And they thought with Shaq, with Dwight being kind of, he was still a baby at that point in time. He was 18, 19, had kind of the smaller frame. The Dwight Howard that was the 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, that made all those All-Star games. Dwight Howard's a center. Ever since the first 2 years of his career, he's been a big man in the middle. I don't think his game is refined enough offensively for him to be a power forward in today's league. That's kind of like, think about the game that Aaron Gordon has versus the game that Dwight Howard has. Dwight has just never even had that 18-foot Tim Duncan jumper. So I don't think he could make it today. Now, you could bully teams, but I think those teams would also run you off the floor with a Dwight Shaq front court.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I agree. Defensively, undoubtedly, they cause problems because they clog up the paint. You weren't going to score in there. But if a team decided to run, obviously Orlando would be playing a 3-on-5 at that point.
Defensively, like, Dwight would have to go out to the perimeter. So, all you would need then is you would just need a switch, and then someone would be going right by Dwight. So I don't think that necessarily would work. And I think if you're doing the team, I think the team is Penny, Nick Anderson. I think it's Tracy McGrady. I put Horace Grant at the 4, but like I said, we could debate that. And Dwight Howard's my center. I think you take Dwight over Shaq. Dwight played with the organization longer. The way I did this was, who had the better career in a Magic uniform? Dwight was there longer. Dwight was a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year. I don't think Shaq ever won Defensive Player of the Year. With the Magic, at least. He scored more points in franchise history, played more games, and took the team to the finals, just like Shaq did. So Dwight would be the center for this team for me over Shaq, even though Shaq had the better career as an NBA player.
So, Nick, one of the super interesting questions that I had for you is, if you were the GM of the Magic for one day, what would be your top priorities and some of your first moves?
Cashing that check. That would be my first priority.
It's a smart move.
Yeah, make sure you get the check first up front. What would be my first priority for this team? Wow, that's a really good question. You have to start the list with shooting. If we're headed into free agency or into the draft, my number one priority at the top of the Patricio Garino whiteboard would have to be shooting. Shoot, and more shooting, because we just don't have enough of it. And if that means moving someone like an Aaron Gordon in a deal to move up in the draft so you can get the best shooter, or going out in free agency and trying to find the room to get some shooting, that's what this team needs. I think that you have guys right now that are pretty locked into some of their roles. Like, that Vooch is your center, and that Jonathan Isaac is likely the future at the power forward position. And Terrence Ross, I really like as a 6th man. I don't think that he, I think that you lose a little with him starting. So after that, and I know Markelle Fultz is my point guard. So between the 2 and the 3 position, if Aaron Gordon stays, I need him to be a better shooter, or I need to go out and find a little bit more shooting. That would be my number one priority. And I think the last few years, this team has tried to fix it. they wanted Trae Young instead of Mo Bamba. Unfortunately, Dallas and Atlanta got that deal done, and Trae Young ended up in Atlanta. And I think this team wanted Tyler Hero in the draft before they took Chuma Okeke, and Miami smartly took him, and that guy's a sniper. So can you find the shooting where you are in the draft, or can you go out in free agency and you're going to have to pay a premium for it and find the room to do it?
I feel that's just been the history, or let's say our luck in the NBA draft. We're always 1 draft pick, 2 draft picks shy of getting our guy and whatnot. But Nicky, let's get into a segment that we call In the OZone with Nicky Football. Pretty simple. Ask you some rapid fire questions, and then we just get your responses. So first one,
Cool.
Favorite current Magic player?
Favorite current Magic player is Jonathan Isaac. I love the Freddie Krueger of basketball. He's just arms, and more arms, and he does a lot of special stuff.
Perfect. Favorite Magic team of all time?
Wow, favorite Magic team of all time. So I grew up a Bulls fan, so I'm kind of at a disadvantage here. My favorite team was probably the 2000. I probably put the 2009 Finals team up there, or that kind of. I was a big JJ Redick fan when he was at Duke, so kind of the Dwight, Rashard Lewis, JJ Redick kind of era of guys. I'd probably put that era of basketball. Stan Van Gundy's on the show with us every week, so I'm a big fan of Stan's.
You spoke about kind of growing up in Chicago a little bit, so I do have to make you choose LeBron.
Jordan, 12 out of 10 times. The guy is just an absolute assassin. And LeBron's very talented too. He's probably just as gifted basketball wise, but I think that mentality really is the difference. But I take Jordan.
And then one player who you feel their time is up in Orlando.
One player who I feel their time is up in Orlando. Yeah, I'd probably have to go with Evan Fournier. Evan Fournier, Aaron Gordon. Which one do I want to choose here? Probably Evan Fournier. I think he's come to the end of the deal here. It's the kind of situation where at some point there'll be more money out there for him. He's earned that money. And just Orlando's in a situation where you can't continue to commit to the same guys time and time again. It's the definition of insanity. You got to go looking for some talent.
Nick, you're breaking my heart. Evan Fournier is one of my favorite players. And I'd love to see him stay, but I do feel like there is going to be a crossroad between how much money he's going to want to stay, how much Orlando's willing to pay. And obviously you want team success over anything. So I see your point. And then lastly, if the season resumes at Disney, like they're talking about possibly in July, what are your expectations for this Magic team kind of closing out the season and going into the
well, I feel like everyone, I mean, there kind of no expectations moving forward. It's just we want to see basketball. If they play regular season games, I'm hoping upon hope you can get to that 7 seed and avoid Milwaukee. And well then and get Toronto, and those guys are really good too. My expectation, I think, is just show a little bit more fight in the playoffs than you did last year. Especially, I'm going to watch Nick Vucevic because either way, you're going to go up against a tough, kind of grinded out center. Either Marcus Gasol, we saw what happened last year with Toronto, or Lopez or someone like that from Milwaukee. So I want to see Nick Vucevic show up in a playoff game and be the same guy in the regular season as he is in the postseason. And my expectation, I think, as well would be how does Markelle Fultz act, as in the bright lights there. The fun thing about this is all these young guys played their AAU national championships at ESPN's Wide World of Sports. Yeah, so maybe there's a comfort level. Like, this is a young team, Jonathan Isaac and Mark. Maybe we have an advantage. I wouldn't go that far, but maybe they're more comfortable.
So you brought up the possibility of Orlando having to play Milwaukee in the first round, and that's obviously scary for everyone, even fans. But if Jonathan Isaac comes back, we all know that the front office is super safe, and he probably won't. But if he does come back going into the playoffs and Orlando goes up against Milwaukee in that first round, how do you think J.I. can improve this team's chances against?
He improves the chances just because defensively he can make. It's another body to throw at Giannis. It's another kind of long, athletic, make it tough on him guy. But Milwaukee's a bag of hammers. They've got guys upon guys to just wear you down. And I think everyone makes it out like it's Giannis and a bunch of dudes. Even when they're pulling like a Dante DiVincenzo off the bench, that guy's really talented. And, they've got both Lopez brothers and Bledsoe, Middleton, who I think is a little underrated. I think what Isaac could do is kind of set the floor for you defensively. And then if you have a couple of good shooting nights, you may be able to steal the game or two, kind of like the series against Toronto last year. You need somebody to play above their weight, and hope that Giannis has a bad night. That's the kind of guy where you're just hoping he doesn't play well.
Magic play against Milwaukee first round of the playoffs. How many games did the Magic win?
I'm going to give them one game off the bat. I think it's probably one. I think the Magic play. How many times did we play Milwaukee this year? Like once. It wasn't good both times. I don't think it went that well. Yeah, I don't think it went well. And I'm not sure if Giannis played in one of those games too. I believe he sat one of them. But yeah, okay, and it didn't go well, right? Yeah, I'll give it. I think it's one game, and it's just because they have so much offense. That you would need Terrence Ross and DJ Augustine to come off the bench and just shoot the lights out. The parallels between this series and what the Toronto series was last year, I think, are very, very close.
Nicky, thank you so much for joining us. It was really great talking Lakeland Magic and Orlando Magic basketball with you. We definitely look forward to listening to your shows on Live, Local, and Loud. So, again, thank you so much for joining us on this episode, and that was Quarantine with Nicky Football.
Appreciate it, guys. Thank you. Always enjoy it, and I'll talk to you guys soon.
Thank you for listening to the OZone podcast, the voice of Magic fans.
Be sure to visit our website, theozonepod.com, and remember to subscribe, rate, and leave a review on all your favorite podcast listening platforms.